Lord of the Rings, one of the greatest movie trilogies ever made, and one of the very few that are actually good all the way through. These movies reignited my love for fantasy and, more importantly, made me fall in love with medieval weapons, especially the iconic medieval longsword.
Run, Frodo!
Today, I have two very special longswords to share with you. One is a real steel, hand-forged version of Strider's Ranger Sword from Lord of the Rings, made by Dark Sword Armory. This sharpened version with scabbard and sword belt is priced around $800. The other is an official screen-accurate replica of Anduril, made by United Cutlery, that sells for around $200. You may be familiar with this line of swords if you've ever perused the Sky Mall magazine in the early 2000s. Ah yes, the great mall in the sky, where you could buy Lord of the Rings merchandise alongside whatever the hell this thing is. And for all you disgusting normies out there, this is Anduril, the sword of the king, the flame of the West, and the handsomest goddamn sword ever captured on film. This sword was part of an official replica line created by United Cutlery that released alongside the films. By using the same molds that Weta Workshop used for the movies, they were able to create these beautiful weapons for a reasonable price. These blades are made of blunted 440 stainless steel, which is pretty much the equivalent of fork metal, but that's okay, because these things are just props. They're basically collector's items at this point. The definition of a wall hanger, hence the plaques they all come with. I even have the official scabbard to go with it, and it looks so sick. I don't care if it's not real, I absolutely love this sword. Sure, you can't cut with it, but it makes for one hell of a decoration, and I'll take this over a depressing wall of Funko Pops anytime. Alright, now onto the real deal. This is a battle-ready version of Strider's Ranger Sword from Dark Sword Armory. It has a dual-tempered 5160 high-carbon steel blade, which is an excellent spring steel for a large blade like this. I should mention that Dark Sword Armory sent me this sword for free to review. Unfortunately, the first one they sent me had a crooked crossguard, and I mean really crooked. So much so that I asked them to send me another one, which they were kind enough to do. So 2 months later, they forged me a brand new sword, and I received this. The sword comes with a handsome wood and leather scabbard that's ribbed for your pleasure, and it does a pretty good job of holding the blade in. You can pay an additional $125 for an interlacing sword belt, which is this right here, but it's remarkably unimpressive. The leather is kind of thin and it's fraying on the backside. It just looks a little cheap and unfinished compared to the rest of the sword. Kind of gives off deluxe Halloween costume vibes as opposed to the real thing. Now, let's take a look at the sword itself. Overall, it's a really attractive looking blade. All the fittings are really nice quality and it looks like Strider's sword. But upon closer inspection, you really start to notice the flaws, starting with the edge. When you purchase this sword, you can pay an additional $35 for them to sharpen it for you. And I use the word sharpen very lightly, because this is without a doubt the dullest sword I've ever received. This thing is so dull that I had to completely resharpen it myself, and even then, it's pretty fucking dull. I left the tip as is just to show you how dull it was. You can even see the flat edge on one of the sides. This is unacceptable. I should not be able to do this with a sharpened blade. And the problems don't end there. One clear sign of a well-made longsword is how tight the blade fits into the crossguard. This shows that the smith took time and effort to make sure all the pieces fit together precisely. Sadly, this Ranger sword has the largest, most unsightly crossguard gap I have ever seen.
I feel like I'm gonna throw up.
Now, Dark Sword Armory kinda has a reputation for poor quality control, but I had no idea it was this bad. They pride themselves on the durability of their blades, but does that even matter if the swords aren't even sharp? Well, guess we're about to find out. looking at this sword back when I was in middle school, back when I was obsessed with Lord of the Rings. We'd run around the woods with our wooden swords and pretend we were Aragorn and Legolas. And I finally have it now. So this is a real steel battle-ready sword, 5160, and it is a very handsome sword. Pretty badass blade, but it is really, really heavy. I know you guys are gonna be like, oh, you're just weak, just work out more. No, this is an extremely heavy sword. I brought another sword just so I can show you how heavy this sword really is. So this is a training longsword that is blunted and the tip is rolled. This is for HEMA and for sparring practices, but it's made the exact same way a real longsword would be. It's the same weight, same steel. So I brought a scale, so we're gonna weigh both of these swords and I'll show you the difference. All right, so this is the training sword. It's pretty light. Okay, it's actually lighter than I thought. So this is like 2 pounds, about 2 pounds, 14 ounces. On average, long swords are about 3.5 pounds to 4 pounds on the heavier end. All right, so then now let's try the Ranger sword. This thing is a beast. All right, so, oh my God, that, okay, so this is almost 5.5 pounds. Not only is it really heavy, but the balance is all off on this thing. So this is a simple test you can do to test if your long sword is actually properly balanced. If you take 2 fingers and grab as high up on the handle, right at the base of the hilt, and then you sway it back and forth like this, the tip of the blade should stay completely still, while the rest of the blade moves around. So this sword right here is perfectly balanced. As you can see, the balance point is somewhere around here on this sword, but I think it's okay because most people who would buy this sword, they're mostly just huge nerds like me, and they just want a cool ass longsword that looks like Strider's. The hilt, the handguard, everything is just really badass. But it's definitely weird to wield because the balance is off and it is extremely heavy. All right, so let's see how this thing cuts. I imagine it'll do well. I had to re-sharpen the entire blade, so it's a decent sharpness now. So this should cut pretty nicely, especially with the weight of this blade. I almost hit the camera, oh shit. It did an okay job, kind of mangled it up a bit. Oh, that was better. When I swing though, I feel that weight. I have to like stop the blade as it's going. It's just so unwieldy. Let's try to get a really clean one. This sword is so dull. Almost. Get a saw with it. So this one definitely had trouble making it through. It's really still pretty dull even after I sharpened it. It's difficult to have a lot of power behind it because the blade just feels very unwieldy. I imagine most people who are gonna be buying this sword specifically aren't gonna be using it for cutting tatami mats. They're not gonna be going into battle with it. It's just purely because it's like, oh cool, Strider sword. It's very iconic, really handsome looking blade. This is a sharpened wall hanger in the sense where you wouldn't really use this for HEMA or training or anything. It's just a cool prop to have. It's a nice piece of memorabilia. And you know what? If an Uruk-hai busts in your house, this thing could take him down. Like this could just bash into people all day. You'd have to like legit be a Dunedain to wield this sword. 5.5 pounds? 5.5 pounds? God damn. Jesus Christ. All right, so it's clear this sword was never really meant to be used for cutting. It's got a laundry list of issues from the weight to the balance to the edge. But at the end of the day, if you're spending upwards of $800 on a replica Lord of the Rings sword, you're probably not gonna go into battle with it. You're probably not even gonna cut tatami mats with it. You're just a huge nerd like me, and you want a sword that makes you feel like Aragorn. So for that, I'm gonna give the Darksword Armory Ranger sword 2 Liv Tyler lip quivers out of 5. In terms of functionality, it's a 1. But I'm gonna give it the extra point because it's one of the best goddamn looking long swords out there on the market today. All right guys, hope you learned something. And if you wanna pick up your own Darksword Armory Ranger sword, I'll have links in the description below. Thanks for watching guys. I'll see you next time.